Hello, my friends. Welcome to Lindy's Magpie Reads, and it's another Friday Reads. So before I get to the books, I'm going to tell you what's been going on this week. The Edmonton Folk Music Festival has started. Thursday night, I attended. Here's my wristband. It's good for all weekend. Looking forward to all good music. This past week was my friend Marcia's 80th birthday, and so I hosted a birthday party for her, and we were going to have it out in the garden, an afternoon tea, but the weather didn't cooperate, and so we moved it all indoors. It was an occasion to bake a cake. This is the German Christmas gingerbread cake recipe from the Good Cake Book. I will link the title and author information down below. I chose to make a gingerbread cake because Marcia is famous for her gingerbread cookies, and I couldn't compete on the cookie front, but I thought a gingerbread cake was in order, and was also a good time to get out the crocheted tablecloth that my grandmother made. A couple of weeks ago, so right before I got sick, I did host another event. This one was out in the garden, and I made 3 different kinds of chocolate cupcakes. Well, same recipe, but 3 different kinds of cocoa. I just wanted to see what the difference was between regular cocoa and alkalized cocoa, which is quite a reddish color, and then black cocoa. So used the same vegan chocolate cake recipe, except substituted the cocoa. So that happened. And I also made 3 different kinds of ice cream to celebrate with the chocolate cupcakes, because I didn't ice them. So I made a rhubarb and anise ice cream, and a mint, and halva with tahini ice cream. And they all turned out really well. I wish I could share them with all of you. But you gotta live close by for that. So something else that is happening is later today I'm going to be interviewed by a woman who's making a documentary about feminism in Canada prior to the internet, or prior to social media. I'm not sure. I'll find out more later today when I go for the interview. So I was told not to wear white and not to wear patterns, but wear something I'm comfortable in. So I chose my favorite top. I hope this will be all right. And the reason that I was asked is because I was involved for a couple of decades with Woman Space News, which is a lesbian newsletter that started in Edmonton in 1981 as part of a lesbian social organization, Woman Space. So I have been reading through back issues of that in preparation for this interview, and as a result I only finished 6 books this week, and did not finish or gave up on one of them. That was the audiobook of Siren Queen. Nothing to do with the narrator, that was Natalie Naudus, and I really liked Nghi Vo's earlier novel that was about, was like a retelling of The Great Gatsby. But this one is about a woman who really wants to get into film and be famous, and I found that 2 hours into it, I still didn't really care. I like the mythological elements, like there's a kind of like a deal with the devil, except she makes this deal with another woman. There was a passage where she talked about a woman who had these remarkable eyes, one brown, one blue, that gave her a cheerful puppyish look. And of course, since my dog Joni has one brown and one blue eye, and she's 7 months old, a puppy, that caught my eye as well. The premise of really wanting to be in the movies and be famous, I just couldn't bring myself to care. So I gave up on that one. What I did finish, let's start with Eartheater by Dolores Reyes, who's an Argentinian author. And this is translated by Julia Sanches. So my only slight quibble with this was where it was obvious that geranium had been translated into English as crane's bill, and it should have been the English geranium. So what is the story? It is about a girl growing up in a barrio, in the slums in Argentina, who has a clairvoyant ability. When she eats earth, she can tell what's happened to people who are connected to that earth. There are a lot of missing and murdered people that she's able to help their loved ones find what happened to them. But this takes a toll on her. It's got a very vivid writing style that gripped me right away. I liked the way that the supernatural elements were mixed in. I'm going to read you a little passage to get you to give you a taste of the writing. El Rescate was slammed. Boys and girls passed each other plastic liter cups of beer, hands held high like suns to keep them from spilling. The floor thumped to the beat of miniskirts. Just seconds after we got there, Walter melted into them like a zombie. I thought it was the music, but his eyes were lost in the color of their skirts. It isn't just love that makes the heart race, but music too. So some of the scenes are really like everyday, a bunch of young people playing video games in a house that's a total wreck. And other scenes are about violence. So, yeah, I quite liked it. I was very glad that Anne Novella on her channel recommended it. And I know that Fraser Simon also really liked this book. And it's Woman in Translation Month this month. So if you're looking for a recommendation, there you go. Next up is another book that has elements of fantasy, and that is the graphic novel Taproot by Keezy Young. Keezy is a non-binary creator. They did both the text and illustrations in Taproot. And it is a love story between two young men. One of them is a ghost, Blue. And the other one, Hamal. Now, Hamal might be trans. There's the only indication that that's a possibility is when they're introducing themselves. Blue says, "I never met a living person who can see me." "What's your name?" "Hamal." "I'm Blue." "Blue?" "Ever since I dyed my hair in 8th grade. I tried to do a different shade every year. I guess I'm pretty much all blue now, so it still counts. Mine is a nickname too." "Yeah? Hamal. I like it." So, yeah, I'm not sure if that indicates that Hamal is trans or not. You can see the gorgeous art Hamal is a gardener. That's actually the subtitle, a story about a gardener and a ghost. And Hamal has always been able to see ghosts, and so that is a major plot point in this sweet story, but not overly sweet. You know, if you like the books like graphic novels like the Tea Dragon series by Kay O'Neill, or Witch Boy by Molly Knox Ostertag, then I think that Taproot will also appeal to you. And another queer book that I read this week is Funny Gyal, subtitled My Fight Against Homophobia in Jamaica. And it is by Angeline Jackson, a Jamaican lesbian and activist, and together with Susan McClelland, who is a Canadian writer who specializes in working with people who want to get their life story out. I did not care for the writing particularly, but it was fine. It was okay. There's a lot of things that happened to Angeline Jackson. In Jamaica, it is illegal to be gay, and so for her to meet other women, she had to go, she and other people use a message kind of board, and so she was entrapped there by somebody who had been using. She wasn't the only one that this happened to. There was actually many other women, but something that these men call corrective rape. So there are scenes that go back and forth between Angeline's interaction with the police, because she was very brave and went to them, and but also going back in time to her childhood, talking about growing up in a very religious family, and just what life was like for her all through her childhood, junior high, and high school in Jamaica. And then every once in a while there'll be a chapter that goes back to the specific incident with the rape and what happened with that. President Obama recognized Angeline Jackson for her activism, and she's received other accolades as well, and I certainly applaud her bravery and her conviction that things can change. We need to speak up. So, all power to Angeline Jackson. Next, I'm going to tell you about another queer book, but this one I listened to in audio format. It was read by Hilary Huber. The book is Agatha of Little Neon by Claire Luchette. I heard about this from Greg of Supposedly Fun. I'm so glad that I picked it up because it's a quiet little story that I just loved. There are 4 nuns who all joined this order at the same time, and so they spent all their time together. And the story is told from the viewpoint of one of them, Agatha, and her realization that she doesn't always hold the same views as the other 3. And so we see her coming into her own identity and realization that she's a lesbian, She disapproves of the way that some of the men in the church are handling finances, and the way that they are handling the revelations of molestation of boys, the way the Pope won't speak up for women. So all of these types of issues, I was just cheering on Agatha all the way through this book. Next up is a much more melancholy novel, Celia Misoka, I, by Shui Yiwei, and it is translated from Mandarin by Stephen Nashef. Shui has been living in Montreal for about 20 years. He's a Chinese writer, and the man who's the central character in this story is in a similar situation. He moved, so that the novel's main character moved to Montreal 15 years before the start of this story because his wife wanted their daughter to have a better education. And when the book opens, she has just died of cancer, and the daughter moves out and is going to university and hardly will communicate with her father. She's off doing her own thing. So he is very, very lonely. And he ends up striking up conversations with two different women, Celia and Misoka, both of whom have intriguing ties to China, which is part of what we find out in the novel as he's finding out. I liked the ideas in this book, and it's got beautiful writing. Ideas about immigration and what it means to your identity when you move from one country to another, and also what it means to your identity about being married or not, or widowed. There's a disturbing jealousy that's portrayed about these two women that he talks to. There was a part that made me feel quite uncomfortable that was about one of those women who's in a wheelchair, and she prepares a picnic. "I love cooking," she said shyly. "Were it not for my accident, I would have made an excellent housewife." Just so many things wrong with that. And there's some really kind of romantic ideas about, love at first sight and that sort of thing that just didn't appeal to me at all. So it was a 3-star read for me. Other people might like it better. Yeah. And last up, this collection of stories called Taobao by Dan K. Wu. So it's kind of the opposite of Celia Misoka I, because in this one, the author is Chinese living in Canada. This one, the author is Chinese-Canadian writing stories about China. The author did move from Hong Kong with his family to Canada, but then later as an adult spent about a decade working in China. So the stories tend to focus on romantic relationships, not all of them, but most of them, courtship and marriage, that sort of thing. And I found the bridal customs, the food, living conditions for people who are very poor in cities and in towns as well, because the settings vary. I found that all really fascinating. I really loved the vivid settings, that sense of place. All of the characters are unfortunate types. Some of them are downright creepy. There's often misunderstandings that are part of the plot, either between a Chinese student and a foreign teacher, or the differences of a ethnic Chinese foreigner being in China. So you can really see the author's experience reflected there, I think. Here's an example of what I like about this book. The portrayal of the situation of women in China. At home, growing up, she helped her mother and father with chores, doing what she could. Meanwhile, her older sisters left for the big cities on the coast to look for jobs, husbands, and money. The family needed money to send Jade's little brother to school, so it was a burden on the daughters, who dropped out and went to work at factories or massage parlors, sending most of their pay back home. Jade stayed at home to care for her parents and little brother. The parents wished her to marry while she was young and could get a good bride price, which would be saved and then used when her younger brother wanted a wife. That was how the world worked. The daughters were Yao Kun Shu, a money tree. I would say that even though there's a lot of kind of unsavory characters in here, or let's just say flawed characters, the author does mostly treat them with a lot of warmth, and I really appreciate that, and felt like I got insight into aspects of modern China that I hadn't seen in any other place. So, Taobao. None of the books this week were 5-star books, but there's mostly 4 stars, so if you've read any of these, please let me know. I'd love to hear what you thought, and any other comments you like to make. I love reading your comments, so say hello down below. And until next time, bye for now.